Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Conservation Conversations. My name is Ana Sangronis, and I'm the Florida Sea Grant Extension Agent here in Miami-Dade County. And this webinar series is a collaboration between Miami Eco Adventures, UF IFAS Extension, and Florida Sea Grant. We are offering this series, normally it's the second and fourth Wednesday of the month, but we're doing it just once a month through the end of 2020 because of the holidays. So we have today's presentation and then one more this December. Everyone is currently muted, and so we ask that you type any questions that you have into the chat box, which myself and Ed Pritchard will be moderating. The webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be sent out to you within the next week. Please follow us on social media, where we will be advertising the topics throughout the month. Or if instead you'd like to receive an email with the conversation topics and registration links, please email me or let us know in the chat box. Now I will turn it over to today's presenter, Armando Ubeda, the Florida Sea Grant Extension Agent in Sarasota County.
Well, good morning, everybody. I should say good afternoon, and thank you, Ana and Ed, for inviting me to participate in this webinar. As Ana said, my name is Armando Ubeda. I'm a Sea Grant agent in Sarasota County. So I'm just like Ana, but I'm just in a different county, a little bit north of you. And today, the presentation I'm going to give you is we're going to be talking about sharks. So I'm going to tell you why I think sharks are sensationals, but not because of all the bad rep that they get, but really because of the adaptations that they magnificent creatures have. Just like Ana said, we're part of the extension. Some of you probably know this, but this is the slide that I always present to show people that are new to extension. So we're part of the University of Florida. So we're land grant university, and our role is to bring the knowledge from the university into our communities, and any question the community might have back into university. So we're the bridge. That's the analogy that I like to use. We're kind of like the bridge between our counties and the university. And we have multiple programs from 4-H, which is youth development, agriculture, lawn and gardening, and natural resources that will fit in. And I'm the marine and coastal agent in my county. With that, I'm going to give you a little bit introduction, which will explain why I'm doing this presentation, why I love sharks so much. I think sharks are incredible creatures, and I always loved them since I'm a little kid. The reason I became a marine biologist actually is because I love sharks and I wanted to study sharks. I was born in Nicaragua. Some of you might not know where this is located. Some of you might not know, but this is a map here. So we're way up here north. This is Mexico over here, then Guatemala, and so on and so on. So I'm like right here in the middle of Central America. So I'm blessed that I grew up very close to the Pacific side right here, and also semi-close to the Caribbean side. So Nicaragua is the size of the state of New York. So it's not too big. So it's easy to go from one place to the other one. And we have this huge lake right here, which is called Lake Nicaragua. And this lake, at some point, it was thought to have freshwater sharks, which I'm going to talk to you about that later, but ended up being bull sharks. In my school, our mascot is a shark. So since I guess I'm brainwashed, but I love the fact that, I had sharks surrounded. I was surrounded by sharks. And since as a little kid, first time I got my mask and my fins, tide pools, hoping to find a shark in a tide pool. Obviously, there's none, or have to be a very big tide pool. But after that, scuba diving anyway. So I'm passionate about sharks. And I hope by the end of this talk, you will be too. So I came to Florida, in fact, because I wanted to work at More Marine Lab at the shark department, where they focus on doing research with sharks. So after graduate school, I came to Florida just to be able to do that. And luckily, I was hired. So for a few years, I was doing fishing for shark to put tracks. So like you see in the picture here, is to study their behavior, basically knowing where they go, what places did they need for breeding, what places they need for feeding, et cetera, et cetera. So it was a very fine job that I had, and I still collaborate with some of my colleagues at Mode. It's a great institution, but that was one of those dream jobs in a way for a biologist. But I have done work also with manatees. We're talking about that earlier, coral reef, sea turtle. So it's not just shark. I'm really passionate about behavior ecology and the adaptations animals have to be so successful at what they do. And sharks especially are really cool and very sensational. If you go by definition of what's sensational, a lot of people take it as a, sensational because of the news, right? Like celebrities, things like that. And in shark head, a lot of time the shark head in the news is for bad things that happen, and normally it's overblown, out of proportions. And it's not because they talking about how cool and sensationals they are in terms of the adaptation. So when I say sensationals, I'm going to be talking about the senses and the cool adaptations that they have to be as good as they are to what they do. So let's go with, so we don't want to talk about the tabloid news. We want to talk about cool adaptations that they have. So through the presentation, I'm going to talk to you about what is a shark, where do they come from, where do they live, what do they eat, and again, why are they so cool? If we look into our animal kingdom, we are, related to sharks because we both belong to the kingdom Animalia. We both belong to the same phylum, but we have a different subclass. So we're here, right here in the Mammalia. Sharks are in the Chondrichthyos class. And then they have two subclasses. They have the Olocephali and the Elasmobranchi. When this subclass, we have what is called the ratfish. This is kind of type of shark, kind of looking fish. Well, it is, but it's a very deep creature. There's only a few species, so I'm not gonna be talking about these guys right here. Also, with the sharks, we have the cousins, which are the rays, like the sawfish, which you do have down south. You have really good habitat for sawfish. You might have seen one, which is a pretty cool animal that I used to work with too. These are called rays, like the eagle ray as well. So I'm not gonna be talking about this guy. So when I say shark from now on, I'm gonna be referring to your typical looking like shark like this, like the tiger shark right here, which by the way, this is my favorite shark of all times. And we do have it in Florida as well. So it's a great thing. So again, when I said shark, I'm gonna be talking about this looking like animal right here. So one of the things that a lot of people know is that sharks have been in this planet for a very long time, but who came first, right? That's a question I always ask when I'm in person. It's fun to ask. Who came first, dinosaurs or sharks? I wish I could see you at the moment to ask you directly and see what you think. But a lot of people think dinosaurs came before the sharks, and actually that's not true. Sharks been here for millions and millions of years before dinosaurs. In fact, if you measure the success in terms of historical endurance, sharks are the most successful fish on Earth, one of them. Sharks came around 450 million years ago, and we know this for fossil records. Obviously, dinosaurs didn't come into the picture until 200 million years later, almost. And sharks were able to successfully continue on this planet after major mass extinction, especially after this one between the Triassic and the Permian period, where only 4% of all the organisms living in this earth were able to continue and evolve into different organisms. One thing that it gets confused, is a little bit difficult sometimes to people to wrap around, is that even though sharks been in this planet for that long, they're not primitive. They actually have evolved quite a bit, and they have become very good at what they do, and we'll talk more about that. So yes, they've been in this planet for a long time, but they have changed quite a bit. So they're kind of like modern version of the older version, but they are incredible animals in terms of survival. So sharks come in all different sizes and all different shapes, but they all kind of share the same characteristics. So we have about 500 species of sharks, and this is not including rays. This is just sharks that we know of. I was given this presentation yesterday, actually, and somebody asked me about deep sea sharks. And yes, there are more species being discovered sometimes just because we don't know yet, a whole ocean. So it might be, and through DNA analysis, the number of species might increase. And hopefully, if none of the species go extinct, we will have more species that we can add to this list. But there's roughly around 500 species of sharks. As I said, they all come in different sizes. You have the biggest fish in the ocean happen to be a shark, which is the whale shark. We have it here in Florida. It's an awesome shark. It's a filter feeder, so it swims very gentle, giant, open his mouth, grabbing water and filtering all these different organisms, almost sometimes even microscopic organisms. So it's a giant shark. And then we have medium-sized sharks like the tiger shark, which we also do have in Florida. Top predator. Oops. really cool shark. And then we have other sharks that are like very tiny, like this dwarf lantern shark. This might seem like a baby shark, but it's not a baby shark. This shark right here lives very deep in the ocean, and that's an adult. So that's the biggest that they get. This is the dwarf lantern shark. This one happens to be from the area where I was born, Nicaragua. This lives very deep into the Pacific Ocean. So it's a great diversity, but they all kind of look the same way, right? Dorsal fin, caudal fin, the pectoral fins. So you can basically tell a shark that it's a shark just by looking at it. If you want to get into more into sharks and getting to know, to ID them and actually be able to tell the difference between one species and other ones, some of them are easy, right? The whale shark, all the spots, very easy to tell apart. But then some of them gets really confusing. And that's when knowing your anatomy, shark anatomy, is a great thing, because then you'll be able to tell what species of shark you're dealing with. And the way to become really good at this is to know not only the parts that the shark has, like pectoral fins, dorsal fins, second dorsal fin, but where they're located in proportion to their body. For example, and I think you can see my cursor here, one of the things that is key for Dean sharks sometimes is if you look where the dorsal fin starts in relation to the pectoral fins. Sometimes the dorsal fin will start over here in the middle of the pectoral fin. So that's, you can tell, oh, this is a bull shark or this is a sandbar shark. Things like that will help you identify sharks. The same thing with the snout length or the width of the snout. And as you probably find at the beach, you might have found shark teeth. Also, by looking at the shape of the tooth, you can tell, you can narrow to the species. So it's a great thing that we have all these resources to really learn to differentiate our shark, which is important when you think about regulation. A lot of people like to fish for sharks, and some sharks are protected. I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to give you more details about that later. But this is, if you really want to get into shark, it's really good to know what are the parts of a shark and where they're located in proportion to all, in relation to all the parts of the body. All right. So cool adaptations. Why they're so sensational? Sharks are pretty cool at what they do, which is being top predators in our oceans, right? But in order to do this, in order to be that successful, they have come up with really cool adaptations. One of them is their skeleton. It might seem primitive that they don't have bones like tarpon, snook. They have, bones like us. They have cartilage. That's their skeleton made of. It's just like your nose or your ears. And this structure is actually very durable, and it's hard, but it's not as hard, and it's very flexible. So for an animal that swims quite a bit and is on the move all the time, it's nice to have this hard structure that'll keep him, contained, but at the same time, it's light enough that they can move around without too much problem. So that's a really good adaptation that shark have. I know I said I was going to be talking about ray, but this is such a cool picture that I have to share. This is the cartilage, the skeleton of a ray. So this is how a ray would look like if you remove all the skin and all the muscles and all the organs. But this is a really cool adaptation that shark have, this cartilage. So even though it might seem primitive, it's actually really cool stuff that they have evolved into. Another thing that makes sharks so great and so good at what they do is they're really good swimmers. And one thing that it will help you enormously to tell what kind of shark, or at least getting close to the species, is by looking at how they move. And also knowing how they move will also help you will help you find out, or kind of hint you what kind of food they will eat or how do they eat. So we have divided them in three type of movement. We have the anguilliform, which is those sharks that move the entire trunk and tail in more than one wave. Normally, these are sharks that travel long distance, but very slow pace. They don't have to rush into trying to hunt, but they're moving long distance along the bottom, very calm, kind of minding their own thing. And sharks like this example, we have the North shark, which they're very common in your area, especially if you go to the Keys to snorkel or scuba diving, you'll see a bunch of North shark, which are very docile sharks and very cool looking, but don't touch them because they can get a little bit, they don't want to be touched. But anyhow, so there's the type of movement in the whale shark and the basking sharks. They're all easy to tell apart just by the way they move. Especially if you're from a boat, you can tell, oh, that's a North shark, just by the way it moves once you start learning about this. Then you have sharks that they maybe do also swim long distance, but now we're talking about maybe going from one shore in one continent to all the way to the other continent. So we have the scallop hammerheads, for example, that they go from Galapagos all the way to California. So these sharks, they call, the movement is called cariniform, which use posterior half of the body in less than one way. So this gives them a little bit more speed, and it's still giving that push to travel long distance in the ocean, which is pretty cool. And then you have the treasure sharks, which is this long caudal fin, these oceanic sharks that, again, it travels long distance. So this movement in this tail allows them to do that easily without wasting too much energy. And then you have the third type of movement, which is called the tuniform. This one is the sharks that only the tail and the caudal peduncle move. So this caudal peduncle move is just this part right here. So it's basically just the tail. And these are normally your speedy sharks. These are the white sharks or the Mako shark, which, by the way, is the fastest. Short fin Mako is the fastest shark in the ocean. And we have both of them here offshore. We can see them, and sometimes even near shore, like the whale shark, and especially on the East Coast up north, you can see them close to shore. So these are really cool sharks, and they only move the tail. And I don't know if it's some fishers in our audience right now, but if you ever put a tuna into a boat, tunas are super fast. They're not sharks, obviously, they're bony fish. But if you see a tuna moving on the water, they're super fast. But if you put it in a boat, it hardly moves because it doesn't have that capacity to move all the body. But if you get more like a reef fish that it doesn't have to swim that fast, if you bring it into the boat, they start like jumping kind of thing because it's arching a lot. So that's the same thing. If you're gonna put this white shark into a boat, it wouldn't be moving as much as a North shark. A North shark, for example, they can almost bite their own tail. Well, white shark cannot do this. But these are cool things that they have been able to become specialized so they can hunt better in different preys, right? So these are really cool adaptations that they have as well. All right. But swimming is not just about movement or how light you are because the cartilage skeleton that you have. It's also about other organs and other parts of their body that they have that makes them really good at swimming. You have the skin. I don't know if you ever have touched shark, but it feels like a sandpaper because they actually, if you look through the microscope, they're called like tentacles. They look like little teeth kind of thing, armor kind of plates, and they are separated. They're attached together, but they're not joined together. So they kind of move as well. And this helps them be more hydrodynamic. They help in the swimming. And also it does the structure. It also helps them with other things, with parasites and get diseases and things like that. But if we're talking about movement, this makes them sharks water have less resistance into the water. So it's a really cool thing that they do. And also they have a huge liver. So bony fish like tuna, tarpon, they have this it's called the air bladder. So they have this huge, basically like a balloon that they can pour air on it, and that helps them inflate. I don't know if scuba divers here in the audience, but it's like the UBC, body compensator. You fill up with air, then you come up into the water column. If you deflate that balloon or that body compensator, which fish have, it's called the air bladder, they can go down. Well, sharks don't have that. They don't, so they use their liver, the oil in the liver, which is the biggest organ into their body, to be able to swim up and to swim down. That allows them to get that flotation. So they don't, and the good thing about this is that a fish, for example, that had air bladder, they cannot go super fast up and super fast down because they have to regulate the air like you will do if you were scuba diving. Well, sharks can go up and down really fast because they don't have the restriction with the air bladder. So this is another really good adaptation that sharks have done to their bodies to be able to be perfect swimmers. And this picture right here is a white shark. And as I said again, it's the biggest organ into the shark body. So imagine that. And that's why it used to be a hunt before and catch because of the oil of the sharks. All right. So what and how do they eat? I already talked about movement and cool parts that they have to be so fast and moving. Well, everybody knows, right? The sharks eat mermaids, tomatoes, and carrots. This is the part that I wish I was in person because some people find it funny, some people don't. But this is the joke. No, they don't eat carrots. They don't eat mermaids. They don't eat tomatoes. They are carnivores, right? They're top hunters. They kill a lot of prey and keep things in shape in the ocean. I'm going to talk about more the importance of shark a little later, but they are meat eaters until very recently. But I'm going to go into that. So they have really cool adaptation to be able to hunt as they do, and it's their shark and their teeth, the shark teeth. The sharks, their teeth are folded in rows, the ones that they're being developed because they lose a lot of them. They cannot grab things. They don't have hands. So they use their teeth to grab, to cut meat, to hold the fish in place, or that sea turtle or that seal, whatever it is that they, the prey is, but they have teeth in rows and they produce a lot of them. They're always producing teeth. And that's why we find so many teeth, at the beach, because the sharks are losing teeth as fast as they produce them as well. And not all teeth are the same. If you look, even in the same species, this is a white shark. You see the top teeth, they are made for grabbing and cutting, but they are serrated. So there's more like you're cutting your carving knife kind of thing. While you have at the bottom, more like a pincher. These are like very pointy because these teeth right here, they're made to hold the fish in place while they cut the big chunks with the upper part. Another cool thing about the shark teeth is that they're not attached to the jaw like your teeth or mine, if you have teeth. But they have the teeth actually attached to the jaw by a tissue. So they're very flexible. So they kind of move as well. And I don't know if you've ever seen how the mouth kind of comes out sometimes. So it kind of like extend a little forward. So it makes them even better to grabbing things and to catch things. So these are really cool adaptations they have. And as I told you before, just by looking at teeth, you can tell what species of shark you're dealing with sometimes. So if you find a shark tooth, if you call Anna, she might be able to tell you what shark it is just by looking at the teeth. And you can learn as well. So that's a cool adaptation that sharks have as well, teeth. How do they eat? Well, they have different methods of eating. It also depends, where they live and the prey item. You have the North shark right here, which again, we have it here in Florida. It's a very common shark. They actually suck before they chew. It's more like a grinding kind of teeth. So they have a very powerful suction, kind of like a super mega vacuum cleaner. And they eat snails, things like that. So they want to get that animal out of the shell and then be able to crunch it into little pieces. There was a video of a guy who decided he was going to kiss a shark, a North shark. It was scuba diving. Well, it's a big mistake because the shark didn't bite him, but he did suck his lips and created a lot of damage. So you don't want to kiss such a North shark, even though they're very docile. Don't kiss a shark. Then you have filter feeders like this basking shark, which we also have here in Florida. They're not as common as the wall shark, but they are here in our coast, along our coastline in the Gulf and the Atlantic. Now less common than used to be, but it's a very giant shark, a little smaller than the wall shark, and they don't eat, like the fish or big fish. They eat like tiny little creatures like zooplankton and tiny things floating or swimming in the water column. And the way they eat, they actually swallow water. I don't know what the link's coming up. Anyway, they swallow water through their mouth and retain little organisms and then release the water through their gills that they don't need. So they do have teeth, but they're like very, very, very tiny teeth, not like the white shark or the Mako shark or anything like that. Then you have the ramming sharks, or the ones that actually hunt by surprising their prey, like this white shark. And by the way, white sharks in other parts of this is a picture from California and in South Africa. They do kind of the same thing, that they come out of the water and they jump and get that seal. So they have to be really fast and kind of surprise their prey. And that's why you see them catching this animal and kind of jumping out of the water, because they had that momentum going, that they were coming down. But these white sharks only do this in places that the slope of the continental slope is very steep. So you have these huge mountains next to the coastline, and it goes from shallow to very deep. There's white sharks that they actually don't have this behavior in other parts of the world. Well, it's a little bit shallower coastline. And of course, the biting, right? The ones that follow you and swim and then boom, grab a chunk. So you have different techniques of the way they eat. And they specialize, they diversify the way they eat just to not compete with each other, but they're making really successful at what they do. So they're really cool. So I was telling you that they are carnivores, right? Well, we have here in Florida as well, the smallest hammerheads of all, which is the bonnethead. You might have seen it along the estuaries and the lagoons. It's a very common shark, very cool looking shark. This is not a baby hammerhead. This is an adult hammerhead. You only get to about a meter, 1.2, 1.3. I forgot exactly how much, but they don't get very big. And they have this cool looking shape, obviously, but they eat blue crab. That's a favorite food until very recently. They was discovered that they eat actually seagrass. So they can cut pieces of blades of seagrass and eat them. So it's part of their diet. So nobody knew this until very recently that they make this, discovery, this research, these people right here. You can look it up. So it's a pretty cool thing that who would have known that there's a shark there. They might become a vegetarian at some point in their life, or it might be half vegetarian, half carnivore. So it's more like, eating all the things that other sharks don't eat. So it's a pretty cool thing. And if you want to learn more about bonnetheads, I did a study on movement of sharks, of bonnetheads. But that's, so just, I'm giving kudos to myself and kind of like advertising my own paper. But this, if you want to read more about bonnetheads, there you go. All right. Another thing why they're so sensational and why they're so cool and adapt themselves, because they all have all these senses like you and I. You can hear, they can see, they can smell, just like us, but a little better. I'm sure you already heard that, oh, if you bleed it, never go into the water because the shark can smell from miles and miles and miles and miles away. Well, it is true, but it depends on the species. But they do have very keen sense of smell, which is really, really good for locating your prey on the water. So any body fluids fish might be losing due to an injury or a disease, sharks are able to locate the fish just by smelling that. Same for sea turtles, bears, and things like that. So that's why they say, if you bleeding, don't go into the water. And if you fishing, don't have your bait bucket next to you, because then you're going to be attracting sharks. So there's the things, but they do have really keen sense of smell, which they can make really good at what they do, which is, hunt. Oh, they taste too. They have preference. In fact, there's some, like you see here, this is a shark eating a lionfish. We have a problem with, I don't know if you already had a webinar about lionfish, but they're not native, they're invasive. So some of the animals, some sharks could eat them. They might not have that taste. They never taste that lionfish, so might not want it after they took a bite. So, but they have preference into what do they eat. Vision, again, has diverse in size, and the way they do things. They also have different kind of way that they see things. They all have eyes, but some of them are kind of useless. Like if you see here, this is a Greenland shark. We don't have it in here. This is like in the Arctic kind of shark. Very cold water, dark environment. They don't even use their eyes. They're almost blind. This thing that you see here is a parasite, actually. So they're basically blind. They might see shadows and things, but they don't see as well, because in that environment, they don't need those eyes to survive. And by the way, if you want to know what the oldest animal, in the oceans, is the Greenland shark. There have been studies that estimated they can live up to 600 or more years. So this is a shark that live a long, long time. Could you imagine all the things that you can see in 600 years? Well, this guy hasn't seen much, but again, experienced a lot of things, right, in 600 years or more. This is another type of shark. This one lives more like in shallow waters, a lot of sand, maybe when he hunts and stuff. So he has this kind of like a eyelid that it can protect their eyes. And then you have other species like the standby shark here. They also live in shallow environments, very close to coastline, where they can regulate, like the pupil expanded or go smaller like a cat, just depending on the light. So you have this cool looking eye, more like a cat eye looking, and you can tell some shark species just by looking at the eyes as well. So again, they can see, but it depends where they live or what they hunt for. They have better vision than others, but all sharks can see. They can hear as well. They don't have ears like you and I, but they do have like a little hole next to their temple, or what kind of the temple, and they can hear certain kind of sound. They don't hear the high frequency. There's more like the low frequency, but that also help them to locate, their prey. That's why they say never like swim erratically, like a dog, like splashing quite a bit, because that also can attract sharks if they are, in the hunting mood. If they're looking for prey, they might get attracted and get confused you by the prey item. So they can hear. And they also have this really cool adaptation, which all the fish kind of have as well, which is called the ladder line. Some sharks, they have kind of like, actually you can see kind of like a pattern there in the line, but this is not a line that is visual. This is internal kind of thing. And it's a way that they can, through the skin, this neuromat cell organ, it's called psyllin, they can feel vibration. So they can locate the prey by maybe a fish is moving next to them. Let's say it's at night and the shark is hunting, and he already smelled it. He already kind of saw the shadow, And then because the fish was kind of going away, through the movement of the other fish, the shark can know exactly where the fish is going or where it is, so they can locate it through that lateral line. So which is really cool adaptation as well. Another really, I know I keep saying really cool, but they are really cool. Another great adaptation that sharks have is this Ampullae of Lorenzini. If there's some Italians here, I apologize. I don't speak Italian, but I guess the guy who discovered this is an Italian person called Lorenzini. But this organ, or this, it allows them to feel to electroreception. So this kind of like a metal detector kind of thing. They can feel magnetic fields. And this help them locate prey, especially those animals that might prey benthic organisms, so organisms living in the sediment. So let's say you have this gray hammerhead shark right here, and you already smell the fish, the flounder, but then the flounder goes under the sand. Shark cannot see it anymore because it's buried, right? Might not be able to smell it because it's not injured yet or anything like that. But through the magnetic field that we all organisms have, we all have energy, they can feel that energy, they can locate their prey. And you can look at video of a hammerhead eating, you will see that they actually go and it all of a sudden under the sun, whoop, and they just take a bite, and because there is where the fish is. And this cool organ also help them navigate. That's because the earth has these magnetic fields, you know, the north and the south, like just like a compass. It helps them navigate through the ocean, so they know where to go. And especially this big species like white sharks, they go from Jacksonville all the way to Hawaii. Well, they know where to go, and they actually know where to stop. There's a lot of seamounts, so mountains on the water, that they're kind of like the oasis for a lot of these migratory species, that they know where to go, where they are, and they can go there and hunt while they're going all the way to, you know, whatever their mating grounds will be or their feeding grounds will be. So this organ also make them really cool and really special. So in a summary, they can see, they can smell, they can hear through their ear, through the lateral line, and they can locate you by feeling your magnetic field. So they're really, really good at what they do, which is, again, being a top predator in our environments. So apex predator, I keep saying that. Why is that important? This is a very simple kind of food chain thing. It's more complex than this, but it gives you the idea that sharks are the top of the food chain right here. And they eat these guys right here, right? They normally eat the fish that is ill or there is old. So kind of keep the healthy fish, the healthy population of fish. So we need sharks because they're kind of controlling this guy. If you remove all the sharks, which there's a lot of studies that look into this. There was example that they removed sharks from a reef. I think it was in Australia. And all these groupers starting to be, you know, there was nobody eating them, so they had so many. And then the groupers start eating the parrotfish, and the parrotfish, which eat the algae from the coral, they weren't there because the groupers were eating the parrotfish, and then the reef started declining because algae was covering the coral reef. So that was a big deal. And then decided, oh yeah, we need to do something for the sharks if we want to save our reef. So just like that, if you remove sharks, we're gonna lose the tarpons, we're gonna lose all the groupers that we go fish for, the red drums, all the things. So we do need sharks. Sharks are extremely important for our environment. So we need sharks if we want to have healthy environments. All right, so they're really good at hunting. They're really what they do, but they get a bad rep because of that, and that's sad. And this is what I like to think is that they're very smiling creatures. They're always smiling at you. And I'll be as much scared as I'm a shark if I see this guy with the open mouth, or this donkey, or this cat. It's just a matter of perception and where you're looking at. So sharks, next time you see a shark, just think that they're smiling at you. Sharks are friends, right? So don't be scared. We just need to know where they are and what things we should do, not to be confused by their prey. And I'm going to go into that in a second. So are sharks dangerous? Not really. They're actually in danger. And this is the sad part. Just like now that at this moment that I'm speaking to you, thousands and thousands of sharks are being killed. And this happens every single day of the year in multiple places around the globe. And why do they kill them? A lot of them are being killed just because people fear them, but mainly they're actually being killed because of their fins. This is a recipe with shark fin right here from Shanghai Cuisine. This is a kind of like a tradition, especially in Asian countries, to eat shark fin soup. And the sad part is that it doesn't add any flavor to it. It only adds volume. It only adds texture, which they've been proven that you can make exactly the same soup using other kind of creatures like chicken and things like that. So it's just, I think, of a kind of like a delicacy. And actually, it's not that old tradition that a lot of people will think. It's semi-modern tradition, and it used to be just the very high class could actually do this, but due to the good successful economy that some of these Asian countries have, now it's like think that everybody does, especially if you have a wedding, if you have a big meeting or things like that, that you have to serve shark fin soup. And this is a huge problem, to the point that a lot of fisheries, they don't want to be carrying meat. They want to have more space for the fins. So they cut their fins of sharks and they just dump them back into the ocean, which obviously this shark was alive when they throw him in, and they just drown because they cannot swim anymore. So they cannot regenerate the limbs like an octopus would. So it's extremely sad that this practice is still going on today and is killing thousands of sharks. Another thing that kills a lot of sharks is fishing, not directly for the fins, but what we call ghost fishing or ghost traps. There's so many nets out there drifting into the ocean. Some of them lost in like hurricanes, like the one we just had. Unfortunately, some of them are just neglecting equipment, fishing lines. They entangle these sharks, and then these sharks get entangled here, attract other sharks, and then getting more, and it's killing animals, not just sharks, but like sea turtles and other animals, marine mammals, just because they get entangled here, and there's nobody checking those nets. So we have a huge problem, what's called derelict fishing nets or ghost traps. And again, the same picture you see here, it's like thousands of sharks being killed, and it's a really sad thing. So fishing is a major threat to sharks. Also pollution, well, it goes with the nets. This is kind of the marine debris, so it can be fishing equipment, can be called pollution. And then you have habitat alteration, which is we alter the places where these sharks live. And this is mainly because of damage or loss to do coastal development. And I'm gonna show you a picture right here. This kind of looks like where I live, Sarasota County, the Sarasota Bay. It's a nice place to live. Obviously, I do live here as well. We have marinas and all the stuff that we have, but probably decades ago, who knows, early 1900s, it looked more like this. It was an estuary with lagoons, so it's estuaries where fresh water meets salt water, and especially those lagoons, those ecosystems are extremely important for a lot of species of sharks that they might not live very close to the coast through their whole life, but they use these estuaries either to feed or to have their babies. You probably already heard about bull sharks. The bull sharks, some people thought they were freshwater sharks, because bull sharks, which we do have here, they go in freshwater system slowly. You cannot just grab a bull shark and dump into freshwater. That will kill them. They slowly have to compensate all those chemical balance internally to be able to cope with salt water, to go from salt water to freshwater. But they have their babies in almost zero salinity, because the babies are better to coping with that fresh water for longer periods of time than the adults, and that prevent these little guys to be eaten by either other bull shark or other organisms. So by us modifying the coastline, we altering all these places that these little sharks will find food or will find refuge from that other fish that might be able to come into this system. So that's just an example of how we altering our coastline. We can have a huge impact into this organism, which again we need. And this is an example of how many people live around the coastline. Again, I do live around the coastline as well, so I'm guilty of this, but it tells you that people like to live around the coastline. So we have modified our coastline quite a bit. And then again, pollution. This is just a kind of funny cartoon in a way, that we actually evolved, came from the ocean, and then now we're trashing it with trash, which is sad. And a lot of people are scared of sharks. They think the sharks are come to get you, especially if you watch movies like Sharknado and all those, Jaws and all that, which I do love Jaws, but it developed so much, it embedded so much fear in people that actually a lot of people start killing sharks just because of that movie. In fact, I forgot his name, the author of that book, and then became a movie. He felt so bad that he traveled around the globe talking about how sharks, how important they were, and now we need to conserve them. But this table right here, it shows you you're more likely to be, die from flu than eaten by a shark. It's like 1 in almost 4 million chances that you will be eaten by a shark. So again, there's overblown, there's the sensational news. Every time somebody gets not even eaten, they get they get a bite from a shark. Everybody's just crazy about sharks, and then people start fearing them again. It's just lack of knowledge. It's lack of knowing the importance and not knowing, not knowing how to take care of yourself, not to put yourself in risk. But I'm gonna talk to you in a second about that. So how can you help sharks? Well, you can educate yourself. That's the main thing, knowing what species you have around. Not all species are the same. A North shark, you can pretty much swim all day around the North shark and nothing will happen to you. So knowing what kind of sharks are there, when they're there, like bull sharks, they have to be a little bit more aggressive. They come to the estuaries, murky waters, hard to see, but they're not there all the time. So knowing when bull sharks are there, here in my area and during summer is that when you have them more, you see more of them. So maybe during those times you don't want to be jumping out of your dog, especially at night or at dawn, because that's when the sharks are more active hunting. So knowing what species you have around will help you minimize risk, right? All the things you need to do to help sharks is to obey the rules. There's a lot of rules. There's a lot of sharks that are protected, and a lot of people don't know. I keep seeing pictures on social media with all these people holding sharks out of the water that cannot even allow to be out of the water because they're protected. Some species are so low in numbers that we're afraid that they might go extinct. So we don't want that because again, these animals being in this planet for so long that they deserve to be here and they have a role in our ecosystems. So we want to obey the rules. There's actually a new course that you have to take in order to fish sharks from shoreline by FWC that is free and it's great because it helps you identify sharks. But if you want to fish for sharks from the shoreline, you need to take that course, which again, it's online and it's free for everybody. So if you're into fishing, I recommend taking it. Don't pollute, obviously, especially fishing lines and not just for sharks. There's a lot of entanglement of manatees, sea turtles, things of that nature. So you want to keep all the trash out of the water. Support research. There's a lot of research institutions, a lot of universities that have people that study sharks. If you can contribute to those, financially, because that's what keeps funding going for study sharks, to learn to know them better and to protect them in better management as well. Also, you want to make sure that if you live nearby the water, that you keep kind of like a natural setting. Like I was telling you, coastal development, especially in estuaries, is being impacted so much that we'll be losing a bunch of sharks and a lot of their prey items. And they're so important, like seagrass beds, mangroves. You see this picture right here. This is a Goliath grouper, which uses the seagrass beds and the mangroves when they're tiny, tiny little babies and then go offshore. So with tiny little babies, they might be eaten by a bonnethead or something like that. So you do want to protect, the habitat where these animals live. And last, don't eat shark fins. This is, it's not worth eating this just because you want to say, oh, I ate a shark fin soup. You're going to cause a lot of trouble. And I forgot to tell you this, but after drug trafficking and human trafficking, wildlife trafficking is the major, it's the most profit illegal trade that is in the world. So not just sharks, I'm talking about rhinoceros, tigers, and etc. But fins, shark fins, is a huge problem, especially in international water. It's very hard to regulate, and it's really hard to see to tell, what is going on over there. And also, use all these different institutions that we have. We have a great legacy of institutions doing research and come up studying animals in places that you can actually go see the sharks. You have the Moat Aquarium, you have Tampa Aquarium, you have many different places that you can go. We have, she passed away, this is the Dr. Ginny Clark. She's one of the founders of Moat. Incredible researcher. I got to know her. My office was across her. She's known as the Lady Shark. If you're into reading, it's just wonderful story. Very brave, courageous, smart woman, Gina Clark. We have also here in our state one of the best shark biologists, which is Dr. Jose Castro, which I also know him personally. He put up this book. It's not that cheap, but it's the best book for IDing shark in North America. So if you want to know sharks really well, you might want to get a hold of this book, which is one of the greatest books on sharks that we have for our country. And again, go Gators, University, the Natural History Museum in Gainesville. If you have a chance to go, you get a really nice view of shark from the past and from the present, and that's why they keep the shark files attacks. So if you want to learn more about really how bad sharks attacks are, the University of Florida provide that data, and then you have all institutions around, especially in Miami, as in Miami-Dade County, you have all universities that do great work and they do great research on sharks. And with that, I think I'm finished. So at this time, I think we'll open it to questions, and thank you again for participating in this webinar.
Armando, thank you so much. That was really fascinating. And every time I hear you talk, I learn something new. And oh, great, you turn your camera on. I just wanted to let our participants know that if they have to hop off, no problem. This webinar was recorded and we'll be sending out the link in the next week. And as a reminder, we have one more talk for this season of Conservation Conversations, and that will be Wednesday, December 9th. We'll be featuring another guest speaker, Gary Bremen from Biscayne National Park, who will be doing a talk entitled Girls Gone Wild, the Women of South Florida's National Parks. I just wanted to see if that would get a reaction from anyone, but I couldn't see your faces. So anyhow, I had a question come into the chat from our international viewer, Laszlo, and he wanted to know, is shark meat or shark fin consumption banned in the US?
That's a really good question. So in the US, there's species of sharks that you can fish for consumption. And there's some sharks that, you know, they taste, I have to be honest, that, you know, they good taste. And there's some population, certain species that we have that they're actually doing very well. So you can actually do that. The main risk about eating shark meat is that they're in the top, at top of the food chain, so they can accumulate mercury or other toxins that you might not want in your body. So that's one of the things. But here in the US, you cannot, if you want to land a shark that is allowed to keep, because you want to eat it, you have to bring it all, the whole shark into shoreline. So that you cannot just cut the fins. But so there are some, and if, I guess if you would like to eat the meat, the fins, you could, because you can actually, like black tips, you can, there's one of those shark species that, at least in the US, those in our coastline here, they're doing well, and you are allowed to kill a certain number. I think it's one per vessel. I have to check, but you can check an FWC. So there's some species that, yes, you can. And it depends where the country where you're in, but most countries now that have that you have to bring the whole shark in so they can see if this is right species that you can keep, and then, you know, you can do whatever, but you can always cut the fin. So fin, just shark, fishing for shark just for the fins, that's illegal.
Thank you, Armando. That's great. I'm also curious, are there any, do you know of any species-specific studies that show maybe an increase in population growth after maybe, you know, after fishing pressure maybe lowered the populations at all?
Yeah, they are, especially in tied with marine reserves. So it's areas that you're not allowed to fish. It has been a lot of studies, not just for sharks, but other species like telestud, like a bonnefish, that they have increased in numbers just because of these closures, even seasonal closures. And we do have those too as well for, you know, regular bonnefish and sharks that when they're mating, when they're reproducing, you might close it. So yeah, so there's really good studies of how some population have rebound just because of regulations. The problem that we have is, again, it's really hard to reinforce. So we need everybody to be on board with this and help, because you don't have an law enforcement all the time with you right there. So that's something that we all need to do a part. And it's hard in international waters because it's hard regulation. But yeah, there's a lot of studies. And if you want more information, you can email me and I can send you those.
Thank you, Armando. And I'm sorry I forgot to say this before, everybody. If you don't mind, please just take our 3-question poll, as is our regular practice. And if you can't see all the questions, just scroll to the bottom and then hit submit. And I can tell you that Armando he loves talking about sharks. He loves talking about fishing. I'm surprised his son didn't make a guest appearance in his presentation, but he will be happy to have this conversation with you even further in detail.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, please fill out the poll, because it's really good to know if, you know, help us make these programs available and what kind of context you like.
All right, you guys are the best. Great. Cool. We'll give everybody else another second to ask any questions that they might have.
Well, if nobody has a question, I want to say something else that.
Yeah, please.
So another really cool thing about, and I just realized that I didn't include the slide in this presentation. For some reason, I thought it was there, but you can tell the sex of a shark by looking at it. So sharks, like most bonefish, well, like bonefish, they have external fertilization. So they have to release the sperm and the eggs into the water column for them to fertilize. Well, sharks actually have what in the males is called claspers. So they have internal fertilization. That's what I was telling you, that even sharks being here for millions and millions of years, they're actually pretty modern and they can do these things. So by internal fertilization, it's more successful for them. It's in theory, it's more successful that they're gonna, be able to mate and they pass those genes, DNA, and be able to have babies because they're doing internal fertilization. So a male shark has claspers, which from the let me see if I have, again, if we have time, I'm just gonna show you. They have, if you look at shark from the bottom, if it's a male shark, you will see the claspers by the anal fin. Oh, right here. Yeah. So this is a female. If it was a male, you will see these two things protruding like a, I don't know how you call this, long things, and it's called claspers. They have two, so you can actually tell a female shark for a male shark. And this is a really good thing to know, because if you're fishing for sharks, let's say it's a species that you're allowed to fish for, but maybe you don't want to take the big mama because now you know that's a female. So, you might want to let them to reproduce. And again, depending on the species, the population, you might want to keep the male, do the same thing with the males. But at least you can tell from a female and a male shark, which is a great thing to know, especially if you go to an aquarium next time with your friend, you see a shark from the bottom swimming and you see two big things here, claspers, you say, oh, that's a male shark. They're going to be very impressed. So that's another thing that I forgot to say, but it's another really good thing about sharks that, it's easy to learn and a cool fact as well.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Armando, because that distinguishing feature is also the same on stingrays.
Yes.
And so you can also determine if a stingray is male or female by the presence or absence of the claspers.
Yeah, it's right. And you can even tell kind of if it's sexually active or not. This way you have to be more intimate with the shark. But I was showing you the pictures that we actually fish for shark and put we put tracking devices in them. By looking at the flexibility of those claspers, you can tell if it's an active reproductive male or not. So that's another really good thing, because then you start studying sharks, you can tell if you have a lot of adult males that are reproducing, or only have young males that they're not reproducing. So again, this goes same for rays, which are in the same class. They just, they're like the cousin of sharks. So it's a really cool feature that it helps us scientists and managers and people like yourself to learn and protect sharks and get to know them better.
Great. So I wanted to also follow up. We have another question in the chat from Anthony. Shout out to Anthony, who's a returning webinar participant. He wants to know if you are swimming in the ocean and see a great white shark, what should you do?
That's a great question. First, don't panic. That's the thing. Number one thing, you don't want to panic. Most sharks won't come to, even though you show the picture of how the ramming shark was by surprise. If you see a shark, probably was already watching you already. So it's not the first time that he sees you. So normally sharks kind of circle around. So you just want to be able to keep eye contact with the shark at all time, because they don't want to be known. They don't want to be seen. So if you swim away slowly and always keeping a close look into the shark, the shark might think twice about coming to check you out. A lot of sharks, because they cannot grab you, right? Like they have to bite in order to see what you are. If you're good eaten, if you're one of the prey items. And that's most of the time people actually die, is because they get bitten and they get really, sharks like, bleh, you don't have enough fat, you don't taste good, I'm gonna let you go. But then you bleed and nobody's there to help you. So that's the case. So if you see a water shark, always look at any shark, always keep an eye on the shark. If you identify as a species that might, like an North shark, I wouldn't care if I give my back to a North shark, but if it's a bull shark, I want to keep an eye on them. And if it comes close, a lot of times they come and check you out by bumping into you. So again, this is, more extreme scenarios, but they have very sensitive, this organ right here in the noses is very sensitive. So if you, bang it, punch it, it might also give you some time to get away. Never splash water like this. always swim with a buddy. That's another good thing. Again, if you get bitten mistakenly by a shark, a lot of people have passed away because they cannot get the assistant to get into shoreline and to get help. So you always swim with a buddy. Don't swim at night or dawn. If you're bleeding, obviously, again, sensationals, right? You see all these news articles about people got attacked by shark. What they don't tell you in the news, because it doesn't make the news, is that the person was holding a bait bucket. It was up to the chest in water, fishing for tarpon, and there's all this bait bleeding, and then the shark came and bought him in the calf, beat him in the calf. So again, it's just knowing, be smart, know your sharks. But if you ever seen a white shark, you're lucky. That's a cool thing to see. Just, you know, be careful and don't panic. Again, you're not in their food items, so
Yeah, that's good
okay.
advice. All right. Well, thank you so much for answering some of our questions here. Anna, are we, I think we're good as far as these questions here in the chat. And if you have any follow-up ones, you can always email either Anna or we can touch base with our presenter today. So thank you so much, Anthony. And we will go ahead and end this presentation for today. Again, we really appreciate you guys joining us for today's presentation. Please go ahead and register for our upcoming presentation in December with Gary Bremen from Biscayne National Park. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great day.
Bye. Thank you.